What are snooze and send later? Snooze is a feature that allows you to set a reminder on a conversation. While that conversation is snoozed, it's moved to the later folder. Once a conversation reaches its specified snooze time, it reappears with an active status in either the unassigned folder or in the folder of the person or team it's assigned to. Send later lets you deliver your emails at the most impactful time by scheduling them for future delivery. When drafting a reply, you can choose to send it at a later date or time. Once a message is scheduled, a footnote will appear on the draft indicating its scheduled send time. Now, why would we want to use features like snooze and send later? Great question. Snooze allows you to continue making progress in the queue while removing the clutter from your immediate view so that teams are focused on the right conversations at the right time. This can be really great for situations where you're waiting on updates from internal teams about an issue, or if you want to follow up with a customer if you don't hear from them in a specific time frame. Send later works particularly well for situations where you may want to write responses outside of business hours and have them sent during business hours to maintain communication expectations with customers. Or the inverse, where you write responses during your workday and schedule them to send later depending on your recipient's time zone. Now, before we get into the hands-on portion of our demo, it is important to note that you need to be in the inbox. If you're not familiar, the inbox is our new help desk experience, and it replaces our legacy mailbox interface. If you're not already using the inbox, you can do so by clicking on your avatar or your initials in the top right-hand corner of the top menu and Help Scout. When you do that, you'll notice there is this Try the New Inbox toggle here. We'll click that, and just like that, we're moved over into the inbox. Right here is actually a short video that you can play with some extra info about the inbox and what it offers. But for now, we're going to click Got It and dive right into our first walkthrough, Snooze. As discussed, Snooze allows you to set a date and time for the conversation to reappear in the unassigned or assigned folder with an active status. Conversations currently snoozed will appear in the later folder and do not appear in unassigned, mine, assigned, or any team folders. In this specific example in front of us, we're snoozing an email from a customer who needs updates about a backordered item until we get an update from our product team about inventory. Now, when you're in the inbox, you can activate snooze in three ways. From the header of a conversation here, you can also activate snooze in the reply editor directly down here at the bottom of the screen. And you can also navigate to the conversation list view where you can click on multiple or a single conversation and activate snooze here as well. In addition to these options, you can always use the B keyboard shortcut to activate snooze. In our example, we're going to refresh the page really quickly, and then we're going to activate snooze using the button in the actual conversation header. Once you've activated snooze, you can select the time you wish to see the conversation return from the later folder to unassigned. You can select from the given options in front of you, or you can type in an exact date. You can also use phrases like tomorrow, next week, or this weekend to have the calculation done for you. Now, when you're setting a snooze, you'll have two options to determine when the conversation is returned to unassigned. If no reply, and regardless. If no reply means if I snooze a conversation to come back to my unassigned folder on Friday, but the customer replies to the conversation on Thursday, the snooze is automatically cleared because of that reply on Thursday. On the other hand, regardless means if I snooze a conversation to come back to my unassigned folder on Friday and the customer replies on the Thursday before, the conversation will stay snoozed until the date originally set, in our case, Friday. In both of these scenarios, the conversation is set to active once the conversation is unsnoozed. Here, we're just going to select next week, and in doing so, we'll notice a couple changes. First and foremost, the snooze icon is illuminated purple, and we also notice that our conversation is now located within the later folder. This is where you can manage any conversation that has a snooze, excuse me, applied to it. If we click into this specific conversation, we'll again notice that the actual snooze icon is illuminated purple. And if we click on that icon or use the B keyboard shortcut, we can edit the snooze itself, and we can also click on remove snooze to completely get rid of it. With that done, let's move to send later. In this scenario, our customer needs some updates about a specific issue, but won't be back until the office until next week. Here, we're going to use send later to answer this question now, but make sure that our reply makes it to the user once they're back in the office and ready to respond. This is super helpful since it means that our email won't get buried under the other email we're sure they're receiving while they're away. To use send later, we're going to start within the conversation editor. We'll click reply, and then here we can notice the send later icon right here next to send. To get things going, I'll type in a quick reply. We'll get an email to you soon once we hear back from our internal team. And now that we have that in there, we can click the send reply option to get started. Just like with Snooze, we've got two options to determine when our conversation comes back to the unassigned folder. If no reply and regardless. If no reply means that if the customer doesn't reply between the time that we set the email to send and the time it's actually set to send, if the customer replies in that window of time, the scheduled send is cleared and the reply will become an unscheduled draft. Again, you can use if no reply to send the unscheduled reply if your customer doesn't reply between the time you set the email to send and the time it's actually set to send. If the customer replies in that window of time, then the scheduled send is cleared and the reply will become an unscheduled draft. On the other hand, we can use regardless to send our scheduled reply even if the customer replies between the time we schedule a reply and the actual scheduled send time for that reply. Once we've decided on which option we'd like to use, we can select that option and we'll see in the conversation editor that the send button now changes to schedule and we can see our send later time right here. We'll click schedule. And now that we've done so, we're good to go. I'll refresh the page really quickly, go to the later folder, and here we find our exact same reply. Now, once we're in here, we notice that our reply has a green bar on the left-hand side indicating the reply is scheduled to send in the future. You'll also notice a scheduled badge in the right corner of the thread, in addition to the time it's scheduled to send. Next to this, you'll notice the options menu, identified by these three dots. If we click it, we've got three options: send now, edit, and delete. Send now sends the reply now and removes the scheduled send time. Edit allows you to edit the reply or the scheduled time to send, if not both. And delete will delete the scheduled reply. When you use delete, no reply is sent to the conversation. In our scenario, we're going to click edit. And in doing so, we can click on the scheduled send time. And now we can change the time we'd like that email to send later, in addition to changing from if no reply to regardless. In our scenario, we're going to click unschedule, and that will remove the scheduled time completely.